The autumn sun was setting over Riverside Park when Victoria Hayes found herself sitting alone on a wooden bench. At 32 years old, she had built an empire. She was the CEO of Hayes Technologies, featured in magazines, respected by thousands. But tonight, none of that mattered. She had just come from yet another business dinner where colleagues spoke about their children's soccer games and school plays. Victoria had smiled politely and excused herself early. The same emptiness that always lived in her chest had grown heavier with each passing year. The park was nearly empty now. Just a few joggers in the distance. Victoria closed her eyes and listened to the rustle of fallen leaves. This had been her mother's favorite park back when Victoria was small. Back before everything changed, then she heard it. A tiny voice shaking with tears. "Excuse me, pretty lady." Victoria opened her eyes. Standing before her was a little girl, no more than 3 years old. She wore a pale green dress with delicate ruffles, and her blonde curls caught the golden light. In her small arms, she clutched a worn teddy bear tightly against her chest. But it was her eyes that struck Victoria most. Wide, blue, and brimming with tears that hadn't yet fallen. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Victoria asked softly, kneeling down to the child's level. Her expensive dress pooled around her on the ground, but she didn't notice. All she saw was this frightened little girl. The child nodded, her bottom lip trembling. "My name is Victoria. What's yours?" "Emma," came the whisper. "Emma Rose." "That's a beautiful name," Victoria said gently. "Emma, do you know where your mommy or daddy went?" Emma's tears finally spilled over. "Mommy is in heaven with the angels. Daddy was here, but I was chasing a butterfly, and now I can't find him." Victoria's heart clenched. She understood that particular kind of loss. She reached out and gently wiped a tear from Emma's cheek. "It's going to be okay. We'll find your daddy together. I promise." As Victoria spoke, her eyes fell on something around Emma's neck. A necklace, small, delicate, with a silver locket shaped like half a heart. The world seemed to stop spinning. Victoria's hand moved slowly to her own neck, where beneath her silk scarf she wore an identical necklace. The other half of the heart. She had worn it every single day for 28 years. Her fingers trembled as she pulled her own necklace out. Emma's eyes widened. "You have one too," Emma breathed, momentarily forgetting her tears. Victoria could barely speak. "Emma, where did you get this necklace?" "It was my mommy's. Grandma Sarah gave it to me last week. She said Mommy wanted me to have it when I was big enough to be careful with it. Grandma Sarah." The name hit Victoria like a wave. Sarah Chen, her mother's best friend from college. The woman who had held Victoria's hand at her mother's funeral when she was only 4 years old. The woman who had moved away shortly after, leaving Victoria with only memories and half a heart-shaped locket. "Emma," Victoria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "What was your mommy's name?" Lily Chen." Victoria's vision blurred with tears. Lily. She had been born a year after Victoria's mother passed away. Sarah had named her daughter after Victoria's mother, Margaret Lily Hayes. Sarah had written letters for years, but they had stopped coming when Victoria was 12. She had assumed Sarah had simply moved on with her life. But here, holding this child's hand, Victoria understood. Sarah hadn't forgotten. She had named her daughter in honor of a friendship that death couldn't erase. And now, through some twist of fate, that daughter's daughter stood before her. "Emma," Victoria said softly, looking into those blue eyes. "Can I tell you something special? Your grandma Sarah was best friends with my mommy when they were young. Our mommies loved each other very much. That's why we each have half of the same heart." Emma's eyes grew wide with wonder. "Really?" "Really," Victoria smiled through her tears. "Which means, in a way, we're connected. Like family." Emma studied Victoria's face for a long moment. Then, with the innocent directness that only children possess, she asked, "Can you be my mom for just one day?" "Just until we find my daddy? I miss having a mommy." The question pierced through every wall Victoria had built around her heart. She thought of all the boardrooms, all the deals, all the success that felt so hollow. And here was this small child asking for the one thing Victoria had never allowed herself to hope for. "Yes," Victoria whispered, pulling Emma into a gentle embrace. "Yes, sweetheart, I can be your mom today." Emma wrapped her small arms around Victoria's neck and held on tight. For the first time in years, Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. That emptiness began to fill with something warm and real. They sat together on the ground, autumn leaves scattered around them like nature's confetti. Victoria pulled out her phone and called park security, giving them a description of Emma and asking them to look for a frantic father. While they waited, Emma showed Victoria her teddy bear. "His name is Mr. Buttons. Grandma Sarah made him for me before she got too sick." "Your grandma sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Victoria said softly. "She told me stories about my mommy, and about another little girl named Victoria who my mommy was named after." "Was that you?" "Yes, sweet girl. That was me." Emma thought about this, her small face serious. Then she took off her necklace with careful fingers and held it up next to Victoria's. The two halves of the heart aligned perfectly, creating a complete whole. "Look," Emma breathed in wonder. "They make one heart when they're together." "Yes, they do," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "Just like how sometimes people are meant to find each other, even across all the years." In the distance, they heard shouting. A man's voice, desperate and afraid, calling Emma's name. Victoria stood, taking Emma's hand. Together they walked toward the voice. A man in his late 30s came running toward them, his face a mixture of relief and anguish. "Emma, oh God, Emma!" He scooped her up, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Emma said into his shoulder. "I saw a butterfly and I followed it and then I got lost. But this lady helped me. She's Victoria. She was friends with Mommy somehow. And look!" She held up the two necklaces, still side by side. The man, whose name Victoria learned was James, listened as she explained the connection. How their mothers had been best friends. How fate had brought them together in this park. James's eyes filled with tears. "Sarah spoke about you," he said quietly. In her last months, she talked about Victoria often, about how she wished she could find you again, to tell you that you were never forgotten. She said you had been like a daughter to her in those early years after your mother passed. Victoria could barely speak. All those years she had thought she was alone, but Sarah had remembered, had carried her in her heart, had passed that love down to her daughter, and her daughter had passed it to Emma. "Would you?" James hesitated. "Would you want to be part of Emma's life? She needs positive female influences. And if Sarah thought so highly of you, I know Lily would have wanted that too." Victoria looked down at Emma, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. This child who had appeared in her life like an answered prayer, she had never dared to speak aloud. "I would be honored," Victoria said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As the three of them walked out of the park together, Emma holding both their hands, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in 28 years. She felt like she had come home, not to a place, but to a purpose, to a connection that transcended time and loss. The business empire she had built suddenly felt less important than this small hand in hers. Less important than the chance to honor the memory of her mother and Sarah's daughter by helping raise this beautiful child. Sometimes life takes everything from us. Sometimes it leaves us feeling broken and alone, like half a heart with no other half in sight. But sometimes, if we're very lucky, life circles back around. It brings us full circle to the very place where our story began, and it gives us a chance to make something whole again. That night, as Victoria drove home, her necklace felt different against her skin. It was still only half a heart, but now she knew where the other half was, and she knew that together they would create something complete, something that Sarah and Margaret would have wanted, something that could heal old wounds and fill empty spaces. Emma had asked to be her mom for just one day, but as Victoria would discover in the months and years to come, some days stretch into forevers. Some connections once made can never be broken. And sometimes, the family we've been searching for has been searching for us too, across all the years, just waiting for the right moment when two halves of a heart could finally come together in an autumn park, surrounded by fallen leaves and fading light. In the end, it wasn't about who gave birth to whom. It was about who showed up, who knelt down in the dirt in an expensive dress to comfort a frightened child, who kept a promise made long ago by women who had loved each other like sisters, who chose every single day to be present and loving and real. That is what it means to be a mother. That is what it means to be family. And that is what Victoria Hayes, the lonely CEO who thought she had everything, finally understood as she gained the one thing money could never buy. She gained love. She gained purpose. She gained a little girl with blonde curls and her mother's eyes, who called her every Sunday and ran to hug her every time they met. And 30 years from now, when Emma would stand in that same park with her own daughter, she would tell this story. The story of how she got lost and found so much more than her way home. The story of two halves of a heart, separated by time and loss, finding each other again under an autumn sky. Because that is what good stories do. They remind us that we are never truly alone, that love survives even death, and that sometimes the most important question we can ask is simply this: can you be my family for just one day? And then we choose to make that one day last a lifetime. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories that matter. And in the comments below, tell us about a time when an unexpected connection changed your life. We'd love to hear your stories too.